for tuning in. This is the weekend stream for my ongoing Crius reviews. We're here live on the test server, checking out basically all of the features that we have handy. I'm going to go ahead and start the stream with a bit of a project, and then we'll work on the second half of the stream, which is recapping last week's stuff for my European watchers or people who can't watch at night. I had on during the rest of the week. On Tuesday we had the live hydrostatic podcast recording with Firaedian, Ashtarothi, and Blake from K162 Space. On Wednesday, we had Mina and Fuzzy Steve of the CSM on for general Q&A, and we talked at length about sort of speculation and stuff going forward into the patch and how we're all preparing. We also then talked about the general outreach and stuff. So again, that'll be a great show to have up when it goes up. And then on Friday, I did a personal speculation stream where I went through what I'm personally doing to prepare for the Crius release. So today we're going to start the stream with building a jump freighter from scratch now that the Thucker component arrays are actually seeded. We can play along with them. These Thucker component arrays are interesting in that they are low sec only. So you can't have them in high sec, and you cannot have them in null sec. You can only have them in low sec. The really great piece about these is the 10% reduction in required materials, which will be a huge boon to anyone producing. Also, it'll be worth noting, and if you give me just a second, I'll start queuing up the builds. So it's worth noting that the job cost stuff, so if we go ahead and try to compare this against oops, that's not the right one. So if we compare against the NPC station, we've got, that's a little bit weird, that's 1501 if it's perfect 10%, but that might be a feature. We can see that if we check between the two different facilities, that we do see the 10% material bonus. We also should see a reasonable I guess this one's not showing the job problems like the other one was. So if we use that facility, okay, gotta click on that. We see that we are paying more, we're paying 706 million in materials, and we're also going to pay 49.5k in job fees. On this one, we're going to spend 530 million and spend 45,000 in job costs. Now, you can't see the build screen, but that's what I'm streaming. No, that's not what I'm streaming. You are right. I am bad at this. This should be showing up now. Alright, so like I was saying, if I select the local NPC facility to do manufacturing in, I'm going to use, it's going to take 706 million in material, and it's going to take, oh, that's not actually correct. We have to actually put the right number of runs on there. That would be why the numbers aren't right. Alright, now we're actually seeing the right numbers because I put the right information in. If I go and I build this at an NPC station, I'm going to pay 900 million in materials, and it's going to cost me 32 million on top of that to do the job. If I were, for instance, to get a team that had an additional material efficiency bonus, you can see that the number goes the wrong direction. Oh, that might be because the materials are lowered. You can see we go from 977 to 953. So we saved 20 million, and we're also going to save some of this job cost because we've saved so much here. When it recalculates with the additional 9% fee, we'll also see those improve as well. Only because we've saved so much here. If we go ahead and move it to the POS, we can see that we've gone from 35 to 29 million, which is because we have not only no tax, but a modifier from the number of structures we have on the POS, which you can see over here. These all of these labs are anchored on the POS, and so they will help attenuate this structure bonus. We also see that the materials have been reduced, bringing the build from 900 million to 733. If I were to go ahead and leverage the team again, we see that we've brought it down to 714, and the job cost, well, I think we're going to end up paying a little bit. No, we don't pay more. We pay a little bit less. So this team is not available to me because it's already set up in Pentagram. But if I could use it, this is what it would look like. So if I want to go ahead and start the job now that I have the outputs correct and everything configured and the materials are all figured out, go ahead, press start. Job is installed. Let's go ahead. This is another neat little feature, is that the blueprint mapping I can actually do remotely. I can see, let's see. Those are not working yet. That's a little annoying. But that's okay. We'll use Blueprint. It will show it up. It's still a little bit buggy. So I'm going to need 709 of these. It's going to cost me an additional 8 million on top of the 664 million, which is still, it's only a little bit, right? So we're not spending the completely negligible 10k per hour or whatever. We're actually spending 2%, almost 15%, 1.5%. I really wish that would break down as to actually what I'm paying as a percentage of costs. So we'll start that one up. And if we look, we can see that the manufacturing jobs should be showing up. Yeah, here they are. And we can review what our choices were and the actual outcomes. So that's just worth noting. Now we can see the Thucker assembly array. So if I'm anywhere in space, I can see my POS labs as much as I can see my NPC labs, which is a great feature. Oh my god. You can now remotely use a POS. So for instance, in my brilliant plan when I set up my original personal industry thing, I was in faction warfare, and so I was thinking, oh, if I want to be in faction warfare and I want to participate in industry, if I put my base of operations in the same region as my home, I can install jobs remotely. And that ended up being not a great plan because I couldn't install jobs that were in a POS. Now you can search everything. It's great. And so when I select manufacturing, everything's basically ready to go. It selects the right facility. It looks for materials. Let's actually try to build the right thing. Everything gets set up correctly. All I have to do is select how many of these I want to build, which is 577. And if I type that too fast, it doesn't update. So that's a bug. Let me add that to my notes to go back to later, because you don't want to have me filling out bug reports during the stream. Expect this blueprint lag to be optimized before Crius hits. It's still a little bit slow, but I expect it to be not as bad once the final release is all put together. No, go away. And also, my actual clicking should be diminished because I can't install a blueprint anywhere but the physical location it's in. I don't have to mess with this facility thing. The facility tool is just to build estimates. I don't actually need to deal with it. If I had a local team, I could leverage it, and I might go back and deal with that by the end of the stream. So yeah, 60, 61, 1. There we go. Oh, if you want a copy, I'll give you one. And then the last part is the pulse shield emitter 4614. So now if you total everything up, we should be at something like 50 million additional cost for those builds. That's not the right button. Let me go actually pull up the wallet journal. So we can see that we've put in about 100 million-esque on something worth a lot more than that. So this is accounting for maybe 2% of my costs, in addition to just the raw materials. So it's worth noting that the build costs plus taxes plus perhaps shipping fees might start to eat enough margin that you start to care about it. Also, it's worth noting that Red Frog has been ratcheting up their prices, and so has PushX. So if you are relying on them to do your stuff, to do your hauling for you, you might actually be losing a lot more than you think you are. It's just something to keep an eye on. And if we go look, we can see, oh well, I have all of my jobs now installed. I don't know why it's not showing correctly. Again, I keep complaining that I want this whole bottom half to be removable so I can actually see what the heck's going on. But we can see we have all of our builds in, and they're like 2.5 days or 4 days, depending. And in an actually on TQ, I definitely would not be running this 5-day job. I would have extra copies bringing this build down to no more than 2 days. To have 4 or 5 billion building when I have this Thucker array as a giant bullseye, you'd be pants on head retarded to be running 5 or 6 day builds, or in this case a 7-day build. I mean, these are absurd. These very long builds are just not acceptable. Then, just as a side note, we can compare the final build for the Anshar before the parts are done. I can go to the advanced large ship assembly array. I can use the Anshar blueprint. It's worth noting, if you haven't played around with it yet, that the MEs and PEs are positive, so there are no such thing as negative MEs and PEs. The bonus from Tech 2 BPOs is going to be much reduced. But we can see that in this particular system... Oh, now that I have Fox4 in my stream, the unacceptable thing is that this bottom pane needs to be detachable. because if I'm going to put in 2 or 3 or 400 corp jobs at any one time, this window is not enough. It's just not going to work. I guess I can, and the list button doesn't work, so that's a thing. Oh, no, the list button works, it's just laggy. Okay, cool. Oh, actually, I really like that view. I'm going to keep that view. But still, undockable. That'd be great. So if we go and we go back to the blueprint that's in the advanced large ship array, and we select the Anchar blueprint, we can see that the job cost here for this build is 334. And that's really high, actually, compared to the existing job I have out there, which is the Shisha one, which is only 87 million, which I don't know why the cost index is screwing that up so badly. So let's go back to the Anchar blueprint, and we'll go and mess around with it at a few different facilities. So if I try to do it here locally, the job cost goes up another 50 million. Also, the job duration looks like it's going to get foobarred. So we go from 19 days build time to 26 days build time, which that's a lot of time. That's an extra week, man. If we go and we check out Shisha, for instance, where I'm doing the other work, we see that the job costs go even higher, which means that the existing job is broken. Okay. The original math was broken, but it's worth noting. So, if I am a builder, remember that we've not only spent, let's say, 5 billion on mats, another 6 if you include the freighter, and now I've spent 100 million on the component build, saving me a bunch. So that'll come out in the calculations later. But I've spent 100 million on just building the components. If I go and I try to build the final ship, I'm looking at anywhere from 300 to 400 million ISK in build fees. So that brings the total build to 500 million ISK is the fees that I'm not that are not being accounted for, right? If I just go by material costs, I could, and I sold it just at material cost, that means that I am giving up 500 or up to 600 if you built it all yourself, million ISK on top of the material costs. So it's important to know that even though this might only account for like this might be 6.4 billion in the end, and this is only like 1.2%, I think is what we're looking at. Yeah, let's call it 1.2%, but I'm paying 1.2%, and then I'm paying 1.2% on the components, and I'm paying 1.2% on the freighter, and I might be paying export fees for PI if I'm doing that, and then I'm going to lose 2 or 3% to taxes when I go sell it. All of a sudden, something like approaching 10% of my build cost is in fees. It's in money going out to no one, to no player. So I still stand by this cost minimization will be something that the good industrialists minimize and the DIY industrialist doesn't pay attention to and might lose their shirt to. So don't be a bad industrialist. Oh, I think the dark blue is just it's just the background for the oh, no, I don't know what it means. You're right. There is a dark blue. That's a good point. Maybe it's the actual cost index and how much I am contributing to it. I don't know. That's a really good question. I'm putting that on the notes. Also, the other big thing that we were promised and hasn't shown up yet is that in the dev blogs, this job cost breakdown was promised to be a full breakdown of what is causing the fees. Since that was more dynamic, and if you give me 2 seconds, I will actually pull that up. So where is it? Maybe it's on the other one. This is what we were promised, and that is not what it looks like in the client. So we only have a slider and a number and then a final number, as opposed to the whole breakdown of cost of labor and all this stuff. So this would be better. I like this window. I like information. It helps tune the actual math. I expect it to be in the game, but since we haven't seen it and it's been 3 weeks, I'm starting to get worried. 2 weeks, not 3 weeks. It's been 2 weeks. So that will be something in my that I will try and post on the forums. So now that we have our jobs all running and everything, and we can see the difference between doing it at a facility, and I can't change that estimate otherwise, but that's fine. I don't care right now. And see progress bars and when things should end. And we can sort by status or activity or blueprint name or location or installer. I'd still also like 2 things. One, just like in the corp interface, I don't have a sideways bar, and I have stuff that's sitting way out here. So I need a scroll bar that lets me go side to side. And then the last thing I really, really want is an outcome column. More so for invention than anything else. But to just have the final actual product, like 1x Anshar or whatever here, and I could maybe right click and show info on that column. Those are my big bitches here, but and yeah, I would really love to be able to do comparison side to side, because it's easy to just tweak one little thing in the build, like to just say, oh, I want to use this or this, what's the difference? But if I want to do like two completely different builds, like I want to build this in this system because it has this team, and I want to build it in this system, what does it look like versus my home system with a POS without the team? Like, yeah, Salpoon brings up a good point in the chat that being able to have two of these windows open would be great. Also, I still think this is a lot of width and height. I think it's a really big window. And I don't care personally because I have a giant screen, but if you're playing on a laptop, this could be an issue. So if you play on a laptop, I strongly suggest you get on the test server yourself. And if you don't like it, complain on the forum. So now that we've done the actual gameplay part of the stream, let's go ahead and talk about some of the rehash from this week's streams. The biggest question everyone has whenever there's a big patch is, how can I get rich off of the difference? And the obvious stuff, of course, gets slurped up the second the dev blog comes out. But that's not to say that there aren't other places to make money. And there are a few places, personally, I'm looking that I think see some opportunity. The biggest, brightest one that I'm looking at is decryptors. Because if I look and I put together if I look at a job that takes forever to load because I have so many freaking blueprints, because I have like 10,000 copies and that kind of thing. So if we look at the I wish it would show me the stuff. If we look at this module invention, we see that without a decryptor, we are getting 4% time efficiency and 2% material efficiency right off the bat. If I went to install let's go play with a ship blueprint. So default is +4, +2. The blueprints don't have negative efficiencies anymore. If I go mess with the different decryptors, so like if I pick the accelerant one and I get a higher TE, more runs, same efficiency. Well, the difference between, I'm not getting any material efficiency. I'm only getting a runs bonus and a how much I can produce in a unit of time bonus. And I have a hard time believing that bonuses like that will result in the incentive to use a decryptor. Process has been the go-to decryptor for most ships because it boosts the material efficiency. It should have the highest material efficiency. So +3. Well, now I'm only getting another 3% savings on the final blueprint. Well, what does that actually mean in the end? What is that? What kind of savings am I actually seeing? And if I'm paying, does it actually give me the price? If I'm paying 1.5 or 1.75 millions per attempt, and if I'm at this 41%, I need basically 3 of them to get to be guaranteed a success. Well, so now I'm looking at what, 5 or 6 million additional fees. Am I really going to save 5 or 6 million off of the extra 2% extra 3% yield? It's hard to say. And personally, I don't think the answer is yes. Now, I'm still a fan of the higher run decryptors, because the added time efficiency in runs should make a difference in the final job cost. But yeah, I'm not wholly convinced that the traditional way of looking at decryptors is going to work forward. Now, if you are the kind of person who uses decryptors and likes them, and I'm particularly a fan myself, and you're worried about your stock, you can also know that the murmurs are we're going to see an invention rebalance around the end of the year, is the sort of whispered promise. Not that it's been posted officially anywhere yet. And so if you wanted to hold on to your decryptors, you might want to do that. But personally, I will be liquidating most of my decryptors and instead going for opting to buy them out when the things change, rather than hold on to them through the volatility. I don't think they're actually going to settle in a spot until after the patch hits and everyone redoes their math. But that's my personal word of warning. Also, I'd really love a BPO, BPC filter. That'd be cool. Oh my god, more CCP people. So we now have CCP Fox 4 and CCP Nullarbor in the chat channel. Great, means I have to go say everything all over again. Cool. I did not get a notification. Alright, whatever. So, now that I have Nullarbor's attention, I might as well restart the T2 BPC rant. Since we're going to a positive, everything positive, new world order, which I like. It diminishes the effectiveness of T2 BPOs. It puts everyone back on a level playing field, and it makes all those people who bitch and moan and complain about T2 BPOs finally shut the hell up. And the flip side, the downside of that, is that I don't think decryptors will be as useful going forward. Today on TQ, what pays for decryptors is the ME bonus, absolutely, because the difference between a -4 and a -3, or a -4 and a -1 blueprint, is like 50% added material efficiency. I honestly don't remember. It's like it adds like 10% waste per negative tick. So each positive tick gets you that back. Only being able to add positive ticks up to 10% means that I'm only going to be able to save 1 or 2 or 3 or 4% in the ME side. Even though I expect that to be somewhat valuable, I don't expect that to be what hinges going forward. So the thing I think will pay for using decryptors is the added runs, since the more runs you do, the less this total job cost will run you per run. So if you instead use the it's not attainment. Yes, it is attainment. No, it's not attainment. Augmentation. If you use the... I thought augmentation was 10 runs. Yeah, there we go. If you're using the added runs ones, I think that will augment your profits towards using them. Um, but those ones are a little harder to use because then you have to be able to build all 10 runs in one go, and so that might get too expensive for the casual player. But if you're going to be high a serious manufacturer, that's one of the things to look for. And so Nillerbor is saying in the chat that they're talking about, they're discussing this exact problem this week at CCP, and Invention is getting a redesign within the year. And so, again, it's a case of, do you liquidate what you have? Do you hold and wait? Personally, I don't expect the fallout to hit the real market until the patch finally is launched and people start to realize that, wait, why would I use parity before? Parity was the go-to decryptor for ship production. Not parity, process. Process was the go-to for ship production because it gave the highest ME bonus, and that ME bonus might not pay for the decryptors anymore. So it'll be worth looking at. Also, that ME might wash out down the line to be a lower job cost. It's going to take a little bit more tweaking. The tools are going to have to be pretty much redesigned. So expect a middling period between now when the patch launches and maybe a week or so. And then once everyone finally gets their hands around it, go, well, crap, and try to liquidate their stock and not be the last one out. So that's what I expect. TLDR, I'm selling most of my decryptors. You probably should too. Also, disclaimer, I am terrible at actual making money off of speculation, so if you lose your shirt, it's not my fault. The next piece of speculation, which if you're coming to this stream, I actually have something that's semi-exclusive. When I had Mina on the stream on Wednesday, he was talking about how he is trying to make sure that Goonswarm Federation does not have raw materials leave Declan. With their refinery boost, their local moon supply, and the number of outposts they have available to them that they're working on upgrading, he is believing that Declan will become a manufacturing hub. He's working on doing that, and being the economic advisor for Goonswarm, he has the power to make that happen. What this means going down the line is that traditionally, so it's going to mean two things. On the simple side, that means that getting compressed low-end minerals is going to be is not going to be as easy as people expect it to be. I think that after the refining stuff came out, people only looked at the yield numbers on their refineries. And I don't think they're looking at the fact that well-compressed ore will be worth more than the sum of its parts. And if you're paying that premium, it's going to eat into your bottom line. And since Declan will have access to gravisites and the high-end ores, I haven't run the numbers yet, but I sort of expect ABC to become the go-to place for compressed ore because they just have so much grit in them. I would not bet that I could get those compressed minerals at a reasonable price. Now, Wormhole Space might be exporting that at a reasonable pace, but the amount coming out of wormholes is going to be less than half of what's coming out of well lived in nullsec. So that's the number one thing to worry about, is that cheap compressed ore is going to be a fallacy. You're going to have to go work for it. And you might have to work with compressed Veldspar and compressed Pyrox instead of compressed Arc or compressed Bisote. So that's number one. Number two is a little more complicated. If you look at a map of CFC space, and actually I have maps of this. So if you give me just a minute, I can pull up pretty pictures. Is that the right one? That's not the right one. So this is the... Here's a map of space. And this is the R32s put out around space. So the purple is technetium, the blue is cesium, and the yellow is mercury, right? Because R32s are regionally seeded. And if you went and you overlaid the influence map, which I hope is up to date. And we zoom it out. We see that these maps are Goonswarm territory and CFC territory down through the south. So, and that also works for the even more valuable R62s. R64s, excuse me. Which are not regionally centered, but are more common in the... Moons are just more common in the west than they are in the east. Come on, you can do it. We see that even the R64s are common in Goon-controlled space. So it is the Goonswarm and CFC's goal to, instead of focusing on exporting the advanced materials like nanotransistors and fulleриdes and the carbides and the hypersynaptic fibers, all of those final moon outputs, instead try to consume as much of those internally, turning places like Declan into a manufacturing hub, and instead export the actual Tech 2 items instead. And this will mean that the supply coming to JITA of these advanced materials will become constrained, and it will become a better market to participate in if you are a moon reactor, or you have a POS that is not in Goon-controlled space. So it's worth noting that it's not that things are going to get a lot more interesting in a lot broader ways than just the mechanics. And so my point being, on the moon mining front, well, let's say you live in low-sec anyway, and your chat program crashes. let's say you live in LowSec, and you're looking for something for your corp to get a little bit of side cash on. You might run a moon reaction farm. In setting up a moon reactor, you might say, well, I'm going to go Death Star the thing out anyway. Well, what if I put up a build array or 2 build arrays? I'd still be able to get pretty good defenses on my POS, but I'd also be able to build things at it. Let's say you put up one of the Thucker component arrays. You would be able to build the components that go into capitals. And you'd get the ME, the added plus 10% ME to those. Why not do all that? So I think the number of valid choices is going to be a lot easier, a lot better, and I think the solutions are going to be more dynamic. So just keep it in mind. Think about it. That's the sort of speculation going forward. I expect the T2 components to get more expensive, but I expect that to be capped out by people running reaction farms. As much as CFC might or PL might pound their chest that they control so much of the game's raw moon materials, there's still a lot of space for other people to participate. Now, the flip side, the why shouldn't I follow my advice on this one, is that if the CFC fails in their ability to turn Declan or any of the other territory they hold into or Vale would be where I'd put it personally. If they fail to turn any of these areas into manufacturing hubs, there will be a flood of raw materials that come to try and get liquidated in Jita. So keep an eye, be careful. That's the worst case scenario. Usually Mina is smart enough that they try not to lose a bunch of ISK, but when you're trying to control 10,000 individuals, 1% of those people don't want to follow directions. You're still going to have a bad time if that all fails. So just keep it in mind. Next, more speculation. Personally, in my own personal setup problems, is that I will be looking at my blueprint collection to make sure that every blueprint that I use on a regular basis is ready to go when the patch hits. Just as illustration, we can pull up some of the research. Oh, did I ship them here? I honestly don't remember where any of my crap is. Well, actually I can buy a new one, and then I will do it from there. That's a good idea. I really need a new CPU. Oh, and Nuller Bore, anything that you would select to use Blueprint does not actually open the industry panel. I'll show it once I dock. Wow, 30 people in stream. That's, I think, a record. Come on, Doc, you can do it. So let's go grab a couple of blueprints just to mess around. So as I head over to the other station, I'll show a little piece of sexy. So the new industry pane is pretty neat. I'm pretty sure this bill of materials is going to go away, but hasn't yet. And we can see what it takes to do each thing and do the copying. And ooh, that's going to change things. That's worth a note. So if I say view an industry, I would expect that button to open up the industry pane, and it does not. It's loaded into the industry pane, and I still can't do the cool, like, what happens if my ME and PE are adjustable, which is kind of also a pain. And like this outcome doesn't show what the actual benefit is. But let me go get it into a station so I can load it up and do the whole corp thing. Pantoris, I will get to your question as soon as I get through the research thing. So let's start with just a regular photon microprocessing unit. And let's go ahead and try to do the research. Let's do material efficiency research. We can't do it remotely, but that's okay. So let's go look at what it would cost to take a what's now 4.5 million BPO and take it to the full 10% time efficiency. Is a lot less than it was last night. So we're looking at 2 days and about 500,000-esque. That's not bad. That really isn't bad. That number got fixed from last night. Because last night it was like 10 million-esque. If I go ahead and use a research lab instead to go do the research, the numbers are not as the same as I would have thought. Why does it go to 605? Huh. That's a bug. Switching between doesn't show the right job cost. So it'd only take a 500,000 ISK and 2 days. 2 days. Why is it not the same? And then if I go and I look at the research labs, it's going to take 1 day. It's going to take 500,000 ISK. It should be a little bit less. Yeah, that's a pain. I'm going to have to showcase that in a thing. If I want to do material efficiency, which is really the more important research, well, I'm looking at 2 days and 11 million ISK to do it in a POS, even with my POS bonus not actually going in. Okay, that's not as bad as it was last night. So my original advice last night was that you should get your research done on TQ as it is today rather than wait for the new system to show up. These costs are going to go up, but they're not as drastic as I originally feared. If we go and we look at the capital one, and we do material research to 10. It's about the cost of the blueprint once more over. No, it's not, because when I do this thing, it makes a different number than the other thing. That's kind of weird. So we're only looking, the prices for research aren't as bad as we expected. Nullarbor brings up the point that the system cost indexes are not accurate yet, and that's true. And it will also change this. But my point from last night was that the factor was like 10x the cost or 20x the current cost, and the numbers where it was like 50 million to research a blueprint or 100 million to research a blueprint, especially one as that I use as often as these component blueprints. It's important to make sure that since I use like 10x of each, if I was going to spend 500 million ISK on a kit of blueprints, no, I lied. If I'm going to spend 50 million ISK on a kit of blueprints, and then I'm going to spend 200 million ISK researching them, well, that's a whole POS. So why don't I go and deal with that elsewhere? So my original advice, I think you're going to end up almost at parity if you already have a POS. See, this is what's pissing me off, is that you go and you run the spinner up, and it gives you one number. So I was originally going off this 40 million, but then if I switch the facility, it goes down to 2 million, which is just weird. And we're not getting, those should only be for manufacturing, not for research. So that's, how does that add time to the frickin' thing? That's weird. Okay. So if I change the facility to a POS, sorry, you have to click on the name of the thing, not the activity. And if I mess with this bar again, it goes to 2.6 million. If I go here, this is 2.8. Now I think it only happens when you go from 0. Like if I go into the thing and I run this number up. Yeah, I'm going to have to build a bug report, and I'm not going to take a bunch of the stream time to go do that. But yeah, the advice from last night is no longer valid. Research them if you've got the space and you want to do it anyway. Research them after the fact. If you don't have a POS right now, I think you're not going to be that hurt afterwards. So let's go look at the next note. The next note that I was covering in both of my QA and speculation streams is that if you are the kind of industrialist who stockpiles, it's going to be very worth it to go through those stockpiles with a fine-tooth comb. Personally, I am not a fan of stockpiling because usually if I try to do it, it just ends up being a lot of wasted material and a lot of money on the side that that I could be doing elsewhere. But if you're a smart stockpiler, you could be making a bunch of ISK. So if you are the kind of person who wants to be ready to participate in industry when the patch hits, it might be worth it to buy up a bunch of raw materials. So low-end minerals should still be on a decent upslope. Let me go ahead and pull up more graphs, because graphs are awesome. So if we look since the patch was announced, which is as the information has come out about the mineral changes, we've seen a steady upslope in low-end materials here. And I expect that to be a pretty strong trend into the future. The climbing isn't that steep, so we're going from 5 ISK to 6 ISK over the course of a month. But not to derail one more time, but since I have Nullarbor here on the channel, I want to make a note that we were promised we were promised something else for the job cost breakdown. So this is what was in the dev blogs, and as much as the individual percentages are kind of stupid, uh, they were the information people needed to figure out how the job cost was made. And if we look on the server today and we mouse over job cost, we don't see that information there. We only have a bar for job cost index, which doesn't actually give me much information. It doesn't tell me what's being used to calculate it. It kind of sucks. So make it happen. Also, Fox4, you will be my hero forever if I can get this job cost modifier information out into the API, because, like I said, if it's going to account for 5 or 6%, especially on multi-step production, then I need to be able to know it and export it. So that would be great. All right, back to speculating. As we see, the low end materials are going up in price, and I don't have great graphs to illustrate this, but as a POS farmer, I can tell you that there is a rotating wave of POS stuff worth reacting. So where one will crash, another one will crest, and there's sort of this rotating what's the best thing to react this week thing going on that's been going on for all of May. So I expect most tides to rise in this effect. So that would be worth stockpiling. Things that might not be worth stockpiling: one, T2 BPCs with augmented MEs and TEs. So stuff you use decryptors to get. If we look at, I still think the numbers are weird here, and I don't have another blueprint to mess with it. Let me, oh, I remember. I put it in the, still kudos on this being able to search my stuff thing and being able to see POSes. You are my freaking heroes for this. Come on, it's there. Unless it's there. Oh, that's why. So this source blueprint is one created using the process decryptor. And if I went to go try and do invention on another blueprint, because I don't have the stuff I need right now to do it. If I used a process decryptor, I would only get 5%, not 10%. So that -1 existing blueprint is being turned into a much better blueprint than going forward. I think this is a bug, because I would expect that we'd map outcomes to outcomes as opposed to otherwise. I know that's going to be kind of a pain in the ass, especially since you can pick up T2 BPCs in exploration, and they don't play by the same decryptor rules. But it would be totally unfair if I were to have these other blueprints that are just so absurdly better than what anyone can create today. So I can even show this on other blueprints, I'm sure. Let's use that one. Let's make a devoter. This devoter is at 10%. And that's bad. That's pretty bad. Now, I wouldn't say no to the decryptors being augmented up to match this. I think that would make it compelling to use process decryptors to completely put BPO owners out of business, but I'm not a game designer, so I shouldn't make calls like that. So the things that I find worth stockpiling are going to be raw materials, especially low-end minerals, not high-end minerals. The Tech 2 advanced materials like nano, what are they? Nanoprocessors or whatever they are. I feel bad for not knowing this. Nanotransistors, that's the word. Nanotransistors and phenolic condensates, composites, because I can talk, fulleриdes, the metamaterials. I think those are all going to be worth stockpiling if that's your cup of tea. I won't be, but that's because it's not my cup of tea. It'll be worth stockpiling high run blueprint copies of modules, because going forward we're only going to consume one run per copy. So if I try to So traditionally you've made max run copies of things because that's how it was consumed. And now it's only consuming one run. Now it's also outputting one run, but I expect that to be fixed. It's still just a bug. But if you have the means to make copies, it will be worth keeping those going forward. Because if I try to put together, let's see if I actually have those somewhere. I know, I'm wonderfully organized. Alright, let's just take the micro warp drive blueprint for copies. So if I try to copy that, and I run 20 runs and 300 copies, not 300 because 300 will be too much. Come on, 200. then my job duration is only 3 hours. That does not sound right. Yeah, it's more like it. So if I try to run the 20 copies at 200 runs apiece, I'm looking at 25 days for that. It's like 3.5 on the current servers. So make hay while the sun shines, guys. The personal tips going forward for how to speculate going forward is that I'm a big fan of having cash on hand, especially since the stuff that you can invest in is going to still be pretty. It's still a little vacuous. I know traditionally for the last year, no one has held on to cash because Plex keep going up and up and up and up. But that's a bubble, and if you buy into Plex thinking you can cash out after the patch, I'm pretty sure you're going to have a bad time. Now that I've said that, I'm probably going to be wrong, but it's worth noting that I will not be speculating on Plex because most of the times I do that, I lose my freaking shirt. So, number one is cash is king. And number two, the things I'd be looking at if you want to actually get in the buy or build group for working on the stuff right after the patch is that anything that's going to have their invention or build times grossly changed, I think is going to be a place to look for opportunities. So stuff like large guns have a high unit, a high volume demand, but take a long time to build. And I expect things like that to crash. Another place to look would be Tech 2 frigates. Is another place where the volume to build is the volume required to build is rather high, and I think there will be enough weird things happening during the patch that it'll be worth looking at those products. Personally, I'm looking at building those, and so Tech 2 frigates, large guns, and some Tech 2 ammos might also be worth looking at. So those are my personal hints. Go ahead and investigate. Other things might be... I honestly don't know. Let's go actually take a look. I want to mess with... Do I have like a thorax blueprint, or did I bring it with me? Right, it doesn't bring up the window. If I wanted to manufacture... thorax, doesn't actually do it at a facility that I can do it at. It doesn't look like the build times on T1 are changing, so I don't expect T1 to get almost anything. We'll see. I might be wrong. It also might be worth investigating... No, T3 shouldn't be screwed up either. They're going to end up paying more, but I don't think they're going to end up with a particular crash. As for how I expect to make money in Crius after all of the speculation and stuff is done, I am still not sure exactly what I'm going to do with my personal build lines. It'll be tempting to go back to the same tried and true, but flexibility is going to be a very useful commodity in Crius. So flexibility of where I build, what I build, what teams I use, if I use POS or local or whatever. There's going to be a lot of different factors to try and optimize against. And so that's going to hinge on improving my current tools. As I showcased last night, I have a lot of tools that are very good at showing the material costs of things. And I'll go ahead and copy pasta that into the chat channel as soon as my stuff actually loads. And the calculations for material cost are getting easier. So that's just, extra money on top of, that's just making life easier. And I really like the change that we're getting rid of extra materials, because that stuff was a bitch to try and put into an SDE. So let me get the link is in the chat room. And so I've been extremely good at figuring out what the price of materials are. And traditionally, that's all you had to worry about as a manufacturer. You had to, if you're going to do bigger stuff, you had to try and think, well, how much can I actually build in a week? But the biggest slice of the I care pie was the material costs. And so it became very easy to just sort of go down the line, make up a calculator that helps you decide, like, oh, I can build so many, so let's just build a buttload of purifiers because that's a good that shows a good number, no big deal. Or to even go a little crazier to, come on. Oh, I'm not streaming it. There we go. It would be very easy to just say, oh, well, let's go look at the most popular stuff. And let's make sure it's profitable to produce. And then let's just print some cash. Oh, sweet. Nullarbor has just noted that the blueprints are in the CC client files, which will be important. So I am going to add that to my show notes, and I'm going to make a blog about it. Come on. So I will. That is a very good hint. And that will mean I can actually do a SDE, a development stream, which will be super boring, but some of you guys might like it. So that's actually really excellent. But the point I'm trying to get at is not just that redoing the material calculations is going to be a pain, because in honesty it's not. It's really, really low effort kind of stuff. The problem is going to be, like I keep saying, the job costs and teams utilization is going to be what separates the men from the boys on industry. Dogma rules. So what I care about, yes, I care about the material cost because I need to go replace my calculators, and I live and die on those frickin' calculators, because if you're going to put more than like 3 characters to work, it starts to become a real pain in the butt to produce more than one thing at a time. And what I want to be able to do is to not only have that calculator, I also want to have the job cost stuff go in there, so I can have a list of like systems you might want to build in, kind of boil down. So like, oh well, I only care about being in the same region, and I'll move my POS on a weekly basis, so whatever, it's not a big deal. And I think being able to pick up routes and move to catch a team that you didn't pay for, or to get away from high build costs, even if you caused them, which I sort of expect that any system I set up routes in is going to suddenly going to move 10 or 15% up the activity scale just by my own activity alone. So being able to be flexible in not only the products you pick, which has been not that hard to do, but be flexible in where you build, will be what separates men from boys on this one. As for what I want to do in grander schemes, is that with the Thucker array and the added job costs and the added time scales, I want to try now that all of those things are being added and it's becoming less attractive for people to do industry themselves for the DIY. The thing I want to get into going forward is stuff like jump freighters, because they cost a lot, they require a lot of cash to jump into, they require a lot of time to produce, and I think that there will be some economy of scale leveraging stuff in the PvP corp I fly with, Aderon Robotics. I think that we'll have the manpower, the cash, and the desire to do something that we can brand like that. And so that's what I'm preparing to do in the biggest scale. Now, jump freighters are are something I am extremely tentative about, because they have burned me and they have made me a lot of money. My first jump freighter, I lost 15% of the margin between when it went in the oven and when it came out. And I was kind of pissed. I mean, laughing at it, but rather annoyed. But when I did the collaboration with Blake at K162 Space, we made buckets of money. We just printed ISK like frickin' fiends, because Odyssey gave us the point where, the materials were going to get sort of foobarred, but we were able to lock in so much cash over such a long investment period that as soon as the market restabilized, I was able to sell off jump freighters as the market was rising up at old fixed costs. So we made out like fiends. I mean, that's how I bought my own personal jump freighter, and I still made like 10 billion ISK off the 5 billion ISK off the thing personally. So I have a love-hate relationship with jump freighters, and I think that the changes to POS mechanics, the changes to the disincentives for DIY industry just to say I did it, will be enough to rebalance the market to be a little more fair in the long run for very long builds. Because traditionally, as I've said I put this in one of my Matani articles, and I can pull that up in just a sec. I have a graph. I have graphs for everything. Bernjita. thanks again to CCP Nullarbor for dropping in the stream. He should get on comms one of these days. So, not that graph. There's a second graph. Where's my second graph? That one. So, the point I wanted to make is that the build costs for things like freighters, even though there's no possible way to get a freighter from the oven to the market in less than 8 days, like that is the absolute fastest you could turn it around. The market cost tracks the instantaneous cost. And even though the actual real build time can end up completely screwing you. So if you bought in at this peak and you built, well, now you have this particular margin as opposed to this margin that you had before. If you buy in at the valley, well, then now you have this valley to sell across. And I expect this strong tracking to become weaker as we move through the summer into the fall. And I think that's going to be really good for industrialists, especially since we go from just worrying about material costs to adding this anywhere from 1 to 15% fudge factor between the great and the bad industrialist, right? So, and the fact that the information will be right there, right in front of you when you build it, I think it's going to disincentivize people who are just looking to be an amateur from doing things that hurt the market for everyone. And I know that's speaking selfishly, but the idea should be that we diminish DIY industry and we expand smart industry, and then traders are going to trade at real demand volumes as opposed to going, well, I can always just abort and jump out later because of reprocessing. Like all of those metrics are getting washed away, and we should see something where the market price tracks demand, so we should be able to track kills versus kills and deaths and purchases versus the build time, as opposed to the actual cost of building it. I think will be less of a factor. Dusky is asking in the channel, how do you crash a market? And the really best way is to just oversupply the living crap out of it. And so, for instance, when it comes to most T1 items, it's really easy for a single character to really build the global demand and drop it all on the market. And it depends on where you are. The smaller the market, the easier it is to manipulate. But things like dropping more supply than can possibly be absorbed is really the very best way to do this kind of thing. It does require that you are actively managing it until it crashes to a price you care about. But I'm really bad at the traditional market foo. And if you try to do it in JITA, you're going to have a bad time because the people in JITA have way more experience than you do. So that's how you crash a market. But crashing a market isn't really, I mean, that's kind of easy, but then you just end up with all that ISK burned. The idea would be if you can crash it out and then buy out the low end stuff. So as you force the price down, if you have enough volume to continue that downward pressure, you should also be able to buy out the people who try to undercut you. And then the rebound, in theory, would be to then reset the price at where you want it. But now you hold like two or three, you're going to hold like twice as much assets as you did before. So getting out ahead on that particular strategy is risky and it's difficult and not something I personally would advise. Also, you can do some stuff on the substitution. You can drive people out of the substitutes and into a primary thing. Like for instance, our corp does a monthly review of our fits, and we will swap out meta items in our doctrine fits to keep the prices where we want them. And that if we're not careful about doing that, we can fall into a trap where we've advocated a metaphor at an artificially low price, and then it rebounds back, and we're buying up at a much higher price. So there are market shenanigans you can pull. I'm really bad at them. If you like that kind of thing, I would read Markets for ISK, the blog, because he does a lot of market speculation and that kind of stuff, and he showcases a lot of the minutia of how to do what he does. It looks like we're basically at the end of my personal allotted time. If there are any other questions, feel free to ask them in the channel. I'll be more than happy to ask them. As always, you can reach me on Twitter at HLibIndustry and in-game at LockFox, at my blog eve-prosper.blogspot.com, where I will also be putting up show notes and longer investigation. I'm trying to do a multimedia thing with these streams where we mix video with wall of text explanation with, God, if I got the free time, infographics. Gonna try to put up some smaller YouTube pieces over the next week, as soon as the bulk streams and the processed streams are out. Also, tune into Hydrostatic Podcast. I keep wanting to call it Hydrag. Hydrostatic Podcast. We record every other Tuesday, but we might be taking... I don't think we're recording this in 2 weeks, because that's 4th of July, and I think all of our hosts are out. So... Oh. And, yeah. So... End of stream questions. Pantorus asked earlier about the Thucker component array, and I'm not sure how that's going to get seeded yet. Check the forums to be 100% sure. The rumor seems to be around it's going to be in the exploration sites, and it'll use ghost materials like the ascendancy implants do to build, so I expect those to be extremely expensive right after patch. But hopefully the drop rate should put them in the, I hope no more than 100 million. If you want to play with them mechanically, they're on the test server. They're seeded just like everything else. But as for how you get them when Crius hits, I think you're going to have to do exploration. And I don't know if that's going to be ghost sites, or if it's going to be in the Mordu stuff, or it's going to be where the hell it's going to show up. But the rumor is that it will take the same ghost materials that Ascendancy implants do to build. And right now on the server, it says that it's built like a normal component array. Let me go pull up the... It's still saying that you can use it like a normal build array, but I'm hoping that, maybe Covert Research Tools is one of those special ones. I don't know. Keep your eyes on the forum. I don't know where that's announced, because I'm a really terrible forum whore. So, sorry I can't be more help than that. Also, I expect those to be, for the first month or so, to be a big bullseye on your back, but I also expect them to fall into the same place as siphons, people will use them, just nowhere near as much as anyone expects them to. So that's where I expect it. If there are any other questions, feel free to ask them in the chat or on Twitter or in Eve or direct message on Twitch or comment on the blog or find my email address. If you try to contact me, I will be more than happy to answer questions, whether they're general about Eve mechanics, or if they're specific about I have X and Y and Z, what should I do? I'm more than happy to answer all of those questions, so contact me. But if there's no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and close the stream. The next one is scheduled for Monday night at 0200, well, Monday US time, Tuesday UTC. And so there should be one Monday, Wednesday, and Friday this upcoming week. I expect to do at least one of those as a code development stream. I'm hoping to have Salpoon on for one of the streams over either during the week or maybe on Sunday we might do something where we talk about how to use the test server, what you should be looking for bug hunting, how to be a good Eve tester. Might be one of the streams as well. I'd like to get Mina, Blake, and maybe Fuzzy Steve sometime over the next week for another Q&A roundtable kind of thing. So keep tuned in. There's a lot of Eve meetups today, so it's hard getting guests. And again, thanks to CCP Fox4 and CCP Nullerbor for dropping in the stream and being there for feedback. I'd really love to get you guys on comms so we can actually have a real interview and talk about Devi stuff. I promise not to ask too many secret sauce questions. So I'm going to restart the stream. Feel free to stay tuned. I'm going to get off mic but put on music and start working through maybe some of the background stuff I got to work through. So thanks again for stopping on the stream.